Welcome back to our sanctuary of stories. Before we begin tonight, let the weight of your day drop away. Find a position that allows your body to fully relax. Unclench your jaw. Soften your gaze. Let your shoulders sink into the mattress, feeling the support beneath you. Take a deep breath in. Hold it for a second and let it out slowly, imagining the tension leaving your body like steam rising from a cup of tea. Tonight, we are not speaking of a warrior who fights with rage. We are not speaking of a tyrant who conquers with fear. We are speaking of a being who exists above it all. A being who stands in the center of the storm, perfectly still. This is the story of Whis. It is a story of silence. It is a story of observation. It is a story of a teacher who has waited eons for a student worthy of his lessons. We often look at history through the eyes of those who bleed, those who struggle, and those who die. But tonight, we look at the universe through the eyes of one who is eternal. We look through the eyes of the angel. So, close your eyes. Imagine a color that is not quite blue and not quite silver. Imagine the smell of Earl Grey tea, perfectly brewed, drifting through a void of endless stars. Imagine the sound of a staff tapping gently against stone. Tap, tap, tap. We begin long before the legends we know were born. Before the orange ghee, before the Super Saiyan, before the Cold Dynasty rose to power. We begin in the time when the universe was young and the stars were still learning how to burn. To understand Whis, you must first understand the nature of his existence. He is an angel. He is a child of the Grand Priest. He was not born in the biological sense. He was brought into being for a purpose. That purpose is service. But it is not the service of a slave to a master. It is the service of a gardener to a garden. The universe is wild, chaotic, and overgrown. It requires pruning. It requires balance. And so, the multiverse was given the gods of destruction to prune, and the angels to guide the hand that holds the shears. Whis was assigned to Universe 7. It was a universe of immense potential, filled with robust life forms and volatile energy. It was a universe that needed a strong hand. And so, he was paired with Lord Beerus. Beerus, the Destroyer. A being of fickleness and cat-like capriciousness. A being who could sleep for decades and wake up only to sneeze a galaxy out of existence. They made their home on a planet that defied the laws of physics. Imagine a world shaped like an inverted pyramid, floating in a nebula of purple gas. At the base of the pyramid, a massive tree grew, its roots tangling around the stone, its branches holding up a castle of ancient design. The air on this planet was thin and sweet. The gravity was heavy, calm and grounding. There was no noise here, no cities, no traffic, no wars. There was only the sound of water trickling into a vast underground lake and the sound of giant hourglasses floating in the air, the sand trickling down, measuring the lifespan of civilizations. This was Whis's domain for millions of years. This was his routine. He would wake. He would dress in his maroon robes, adjusting the blue sash around his waist. He would ensure his white hair was perfectly coiffed, defying gravity with an effortless grace. He would check the hourglasses. He would check the sleeping god. In the vast silence of the temple, time moved differently. A century was a minute. A millennium was an hour. To an angel, the rise and fall of an empire was like watching a flower bloom and wither in fast motion. Whis found a certain beauty in the transience of it all. He walked the halls of the castle, his footsteps making no sound on the polished stone floors. He tended to the gardens where glowing bioluminescent plants grew, flora that existed nowhere else in the cosmos. He pruned them gently, humming a melody that had no words, a song older than the galaxies themselves. His primary duty, however, was the care of Lord Beerus. "Lord Beerus," he would whisper, his voice soft, polite and unbothered, standing before the massive floating bed where the destroyer slumbered. "It is time to wake up. You have an appointment with a supernova." Beerus would grumble. He would roll over, clutching a pillow. He would demand food, and Whis, with the patience of a saint and the speed of light, would provide. Cooking was not just a chore for Whis. It was an art. It was a way to interact with the creation he was sworn not to interfere with. He couldn't save a planet, and he couldn't destroy one. But he could taste its ingredients. He could sample its culture through a spoon. He would prepare elaborate feasts in the silent kitchen, chopping vegetables with a knife that moved so fast it was invisible. He would simmer broths that smelled of spices from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. He would plate the dishes with geometric precision. For eons, they traveled the universe together. The destroyer and the attendant. They were a terrifying pair, though they rarely looked it. Beerus, looking like a scrawny purple cat. Whis, looking like a tall, effeminate scholar. They would arrive on a world. Beerus would judge it. If the food was bad or the manners were lacking, he would raise a finger. A distinct purple energy would gather, and the world would vanish. Whis would watch. He never flinched. He never argued. He never felt sadness. Angels are not devoid of emotion, but they are detached from attachment. They understand that destruction is necessary for creation. A forest fire burns down the old trees so the new saplings can grow. Beerus was the fire. Whis was the wind that guided it. A pity, Whis might say, watching a civilization turn to dust. Their soufflé was actually quite promising, but their architecture was dreadfully asymmetrical. Then he would tap his staff. A tunnel of light would envelop them, and they would streak across the cosmos, leaving the destruction behind, returning to their quiet pyramid, returning to the sleep. During these long stretches of time, when Beerus returned to his slumber, Whis observed. He held a staff with a black orb floating above it. This orb was a window into anywhere and any time. He used it to watch the universe unfold. He saw empires rise and fall. He saw species crawl out of the mud, build starships, conquer their neighbors, and then collapse under the weight of their own hubris. He watched the rise of a particular coldness in the galaxy. He saw King Cold, a massive being of horns and cape, turning planets into real estate. He saw the birth of Frieza, the prodigy who never needed to train, the one who viewed planets not as homes but as inventory. Whis found them interesting in a clinical way. They were efficient. They did the destroyer's job for him, in a sense. They pruned the weeds. "Look, Lord Beerus," Whis said one day, showing the image of Frieza in the orb during a brief waking period. "This one is quite industrious. He has a certain flair." Beerus yawned, picking his teeth. "He's loud, and he lacks dignity. But as long as he destroys, I can sleep a little longer." And so, Frieza was allowed to reign. The Frieza Force became a machine of corporate evil, processing planets like inventory. Whis watched it all. He watched the Saiyans, a race of barbarians on a red world. He saw their potential for violence, their obsession with combat. He saw King Vegeta bowing to Frieza, swallowing his pride, accepting Scouters as a gift that was truly a leash. He also saw the anomalies. He saw a low-class warrior named Bardock, who stood alone against the inevitable. Whis watched through the orb as Bardock flew up to face Frieza's ship, his armor cracked, his spirit burning. He saw the blue energy blast Bardock through, a defiant spark against the darkness. "Oh?" Whis noted, tilting his head. "A survivor. How uncharacteristically sloppy of Frieza." He watched the supernova descend. He saw the red planet crack like an egg. He saw the silent flash of white light that extinguished the Saiyan race. To Whis, it was just another Tuesday, another data point in the long history of the universe. He didn't intervene. He couldn't. The angel law is absolute. Neutrality. If an angel fights seriously, they are erased. If an angel saves a mortal from their destiny, they violate the order. Whis is a guide, not a savior. He is the shoreline, not the boat. But even a shoreline changes over time. Whis began to notice a shift in the cosmic balance. The mortals were evolving. They were no longer just biological accidents. They were tapping into powers that touched the divine. He watched the survivor, the baby in the pod, land on Earth. He watched Kakarot become Goku. He watched the boy bump his head and forget his programming. He watched this Goku grow. He saw him fight not to destroy but to improve. He saw him spare his enemies. He saw him make friends with monsters. Whis found this amusing. "He fights like a god," Whis mused to himself, watching Goku battle Frieza on Namek through his staff. "But he thinks like a child. Fascinating." He saw the golden transformation, the Super Saiyan, a legend that Frieza had feared. We saw the rage, the gold hair, the teal eyes. He saw the raw power of it. It was crude, it was messy, it leaked energy like a sieve, but it was potent. Beerus might find this one interesting, Whis thought. Eventually. But Beerus was asleep. He slept through the Namek saga. He slept through the androids. He slept through the arrival of Majin Buu. Whis kept the vigil alone. He tended to the garden of the castle. He watered the strange, glowing fish in the oracle bowls. He practiced his own training. Training for an angel is not about lifting weights or screaming to power up. It is about stillness. It is about ultra instinct, the ability to sever the consciousness from the body, to let the body think for itself, to move without thought, without emotion, without lag. Whis would stand on the tip of a needle-thin rock, balanced on one toe, his eyes closed. A butterfly would land on his nose. He would not move. The wind would howl. He would not sway. He was absolute calmness. He was the void. But the universe has a way of knocking on the door, even when you live in a different dimension. The ripples of Goku's actions began to reach even the Destroyer's planet. The defeat of Frieza, the defeat of Buu. These were events that shook the foundation of the mortal level. One day, the oracle fish, a prophetic creature that lived in a bowl in Whis' staff room, woke up. "Whis," the fish chirped. "Whis, I have a prophecy." Whis paused, holding a teapot. "Do you now? Is it about the quality of the biscuits?" "No," the fish squeaked. "It is about a rival for Lord Beerus, a Super Saiyan God." Whis smiled. "A rival? For the Destroyer?" It seemed unlikely, but prophecies were rare and they were usually accurate. He noted it down. He stored it in his memory, alongside the recipes for 1,000 different curries. Time marched on. Age 778 arrived. The cycle of sleep ended. Lord Beerus woke up, and for the first time in eons, he woke up with a dream. A dream of a Super Saiyan God. "Whis," Beerus yawned, stretching his limbs, his joints popping like firecrackers. "I had a premonition. Tell me, did Frieza destroy planet Vegeta?" "Yes, my lord," Whis replied, hovering nearby with a towel. "He did, without a trace, though he left a few stragglers, and he himself was defeated." "Defeated?" Beerus's ears twitched. "By whom?" "By a Saiyan," Whis said, tapping his staff. The image of Goku appeared. Goku. And subsequently, by the time-traveling son of the Prince Vegeta. Frieza was cut in half, then vaporized. Beerus peered at the image. "A Super Saiyan. And this one has gold hair. Is this the Super Saiyan God?" "I believe they just call it Super Saiyan, my lord. It seems to be a biological transformation triggered by anger." "Anger," Beerus scoffed. "How primitive. Still, let us go meet him. This Goku. Where is he?" "He is currently on the planet of the North Kai," Whis said. "Training." "North Kai's planet? That tiny thing? I thought I destroyed that." "You destroyed most of it, my lord. It is quite small now." "Very well," Beerus said, placing a hand on Whis' shoulder. "Take me there. I want to see if this dream has any teeth." And so, the quiet observation ended. The era of interaction began. Whis tapped his staff. A column of light, brilliant and multicolored, engulfed them. They shot through the universe faster than light, faster than time. As they traveled, Whis felt a subtle shift in the cosmos. He looked at the stars, blurring past them. He felt the threads of destiny reweaving themselves. The isolation was over. The angel was descending from the heavens, not to destroy, but to investigate. He didn't know it then, but he was traveling toward his new purpose. He wasn't just going to meet a warrior. He was going to meet a student. He was going to find the one being in the universe who could make him laugh, who could surprise him, and who would eventually challenge the very hierarchy of the gods. But for now, it was just a trip, a commute. "I hope," Whis said calmly as the stars streaked by, "that they have good food on this North Kai's planet. I'm feeling rather peckish." "If the food is bad," Beerus grumbled, "I'll destroy the planet." "As you wish, my lord," Whis replied. And they vanished into the light, leaving the silence of their home behind, heading toward a destiny wrapped in an orange sky. The journey through the cosmos is not a physical sensation for an angel. It is not the rattling vibration of a spaceship hull or the pressing force of G-force against the chest. It is a state of flow. Whis and Beerus traveled inside a bubble of transparent energy, a sphere of perfect stillness moving through the warp of space-time. Outside the sphere, the universe was a blur of neon streaks, stars stretching into infinite lines of white, blue and violet. Inside it was quiet. Whis held his staff, checking the coordinates. "It is a small planet," Whis noted, his voice calm against the visual chaos outside. "The gravity is 10 times that of a standard world. It belongs to the North Kai, a peculiar deity who enjoys driving a car on a road that goes nowhere." Beerus sat cross-legged in the air, his eyes closed. "Does he have food?" "I believe so," Whis said, "though his culinary expertise is limited to what he can conjure." They began to decelerate. The streaks of light shortened, condensing back into stars. The warp bubble dissolved. They hovered in the space of the northern quadrant. Below them sat a tiny, spherical world, green and lush, dominated by a single house and a single winding road. They descended. The landing was soft. Whis's boots touched the grass of King Kai's planet. The air smelled of freshly cut turf and old engine oil. It was a humble place. King Kai was there, trembling. He was a round, blue deity with sunglasses, and he was currently sweating profusely. Behind him hid the Saiyan. Whis looked at Goku. This was the survivor. This was the baby Bardock had sent away. To Whis's eyes, Goku did not look like a Super Saiyan God. He looked simple. He wore a heavy orange gi. His hair was black and unruly. His posture was relaxed, almost careless. But beneath that simplicity, Whis could see the energy. It was a roaring fire, bright and warm, but uncontained. It spilled out of him in waves. "Yo!" Goku said, stepping forward, ignoring King Kai's frantic attempts to silence him. "You're the Lord Beerus guy, right? You look strong." Beerus looked at the Saiyan with half-lidded eyes. He sniffed the air. "You smell of dirt," Beerus said. "Show me this power. Show me the Super Saiyan God." "I don't know what that is," Goku admitted, scratching his head. "But I can go Super Saiyan." Whis watched with polite interest as the demonstration began. He stepped back, leaning on his staff, becoming part of the scenery. Goku transformed. First, the golden hair, then the electricity of the second level, and finally, the third. The air on the tiny planet grew heavy. The ground shook. Goku's hair grew long, reaching his waist, a mane of golden light. His brow ridge thickened. He looked primal. He looked powerful. To a mortal, this was the pinnacle of strength. To King Kai, it was terrifying. To Whis, it was merely loud. "Ha!" Goku shouted, the sound echoing across the small world. He charged. The fight, if it could be called that, was brief. Goku threw punches that could shatter mountains. He moved faster than the eye could follow. He poured every ounce of his warrior spirit into the assault. Beerus did not attack. He simply moved. He dodged with a minimal economy of motion, his hands clasped behind his back. He stepped to the left. He ducked. He drifted backward. He looked bored. Whis observed the footwork. Goku was wasting energy. Every scream, every flex of a muscle, every overflow of aura was wasted effort. He was a leaking vessel. "You have spirit," Beerus noted, yawning. "But you are not a god." Beerus raised a hand. He didn't punch. He didn't fire a beam. He simply flicked his finger. He tapped Goku on the forehead. Also, a light chop to the neck. It was a motion so gentle it wouldn't have cracked an egg. But the precision was absolute. Goku's eyes rolled back. The golden hair vanished, retreating back into black. The massive energy signature snuffed out like a candle in a gale. Goku fell to the grass, unconscious. Silence returned to the tiny planet. The wind rustled the leaves of the single tree. "Disappointing," Beerus said, dusting off his shoulder. "Whis, where is the other one? The prince?" Whis consulted his staff, the orb glowing with a soft white light. "Prince Vegeta is on Earth. It appears to be a special occasion, a birthday party for his wife, Bulma." "A party?" Beerus's ear twitched. "Does a party imply food?" "I would assume so, my lord. Earthlings are quite fond of celebrating with feasts." "Then we go to Earth," Beerus decided. "If the prince cannot show me the Super Saiyan God, I will destroy the planet. But first, I will eat." Whis tapped his staff. "Hold on, my lord." They vanished in a column of light, leaving the unconscious Goku and the terrified King Kai behind. The journey to Earth was instantaneous. One moment, the green grass of the Kai world. The next, the salty, humid air of a terrestrial ocean. They materialized on the deck of a massive white cruise ship. The sky was a brilliant, cheerful blue. The sun was high. Below them, the ocean sparkled with diamonds of light. The sounds of the party washed over them. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. The smell was overwhelming, a cacophony of scents. Roasted meats, sugary confections, frying oil, perfumes, and the brine of the sea. Whis inhaled deeply. "Oh my," he whispered. "The olfactory data is complex." They landed on the deck. The partygoers stopped. They looked at the strange pair, the purple cat and the tall blue man. Most assumed they were entertainers, but one man did not. Vegeta stood frozen near the buffet. His face had drained of color. He was trembling. He knew. He remembered the stories. He remembered his father, King Vegeta, bowing in the dirt. He remembered the fear that even Frieza held for the destroyer. Vegeta rushed forward, sliding to his knees. He cast aside his pride, his royal heritage, everything. He became a servant. "Lord Beerus," Vegeta stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. We are honored. Please, join us." Whis watched Vegeta with a hint of sympathy. The prince carried the weight of his past like a heavy cloak. He was terrified that his new home, his family, would be erased just like his old one. "We are here for the Super Saiyan God," Beerus announced, looking around at the decorations. I don't know what that is," Vegeta admitted, his voice shaking. "Pity," Beerus said. He raised a finger. The purple energy began to gather. The destruction was seconds away. "Wait," Vegeta shouted. "The food! We have the best food in the universe, please! Try it before you decide." Beerus paused. The energy faded. "Very well. Feed me." And so began the most tense, surreal banquet in the history of Earth. Whis found himself enchanted. He drifted away from Beerus and Vegeta, allowing the prince to distract the destroyer. Whis was drawn to the buffet tables. He saw colors he had never seen on a plate. He saw textures that looked soft, crunchy, gelatinous and flaky all at once. He picked up a small rectangular item. It was a slice of raw fish on a bed of white rice. Sushi. He placed it in his mouth. The sensation was immediate. The rice was vinegared and sweet. The fish was cold and buttery. The soy sauce provided a sharp, salty counterpoint. It dissolved on his tongue. Whis' eyes widened. He placed a hand on his cheek. "Oh my," he murmured. "This is exquisite." He moved to the next table. Small, round balls of dough covered in a brown sauce and dancing flakes of fish. Takoyaki. He ate one. It was hot, creamy inside, with a piece of octopus that provided a pleasant chew. "Delicious," Whis said, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Lord Beerus, you simply must try this. It is a ball of dough with a surprise inside." For an hour, the crisis was averted by culinary diplomacy. Beerus ate. Whis ate. They sat by the pool enjoying the sun. The tension remained. Vegeta was hovering, terrified that someone would offend the god. but the atmosphere was largely peaceful. Whis observed the Earthlings. They were a curious bunch. They were weak, incredibly weak by cosmic standards. A stiff breeze from Beerus would vaporize them. Yet, they were happy. They laughed. They argued. They played games. They had a vibrancy that the sterile halls of Frieza's ship or the empty rocks of Vampa lacked. They are quite charming, Whis noted, sipping a tropical drink with a small umbrella in it. In a chaotic sort of way. But chaos is the enemy of a god of destruction. The incident happened over something trivial. It always does. Beerus wandered over to a pink, blob-like creature named Majin Buu. Buu had a collection of small cups. Inside each cup was a yellow, wobbling substance. Pudding. Beerus was intrigued. "Give me one," the god commanded. Buu, being a creature of pure id and gluttony, licked all of the cups. "No! All for Buu!" It was a childish refusal, a moment of greed. But to a god who demands absolute respect, it was a declaration of war. The air on the ship changed instantly. The blue sky seemed to darken. The ocean went still. The seagulls stopped crying. Beerus's eyes narrowed. The pupils became slits. The purple aura flared, not as a gentle mist, but as a raging fire. "You greedy, fat nuisance," Beerus hissed. He grabbed Buu by the head antenna and spun him. He threw the pink monster into the ocean. Chaos erupted. The Z fighters, Piccolo, Tien, Android 18, they all sensed the shift. They attacked. They rushed the god of destruction, trying to defend their friend, trying to defend the party. Whis sighed. He took another piece of sushi. He dipped it carefully in the soy sauce. And it was going so well, he murmured to himself. He watched the fight from the sidelines. It was not a battle. It was a correction. Android 18 tried to punch Beerus. Beerus caught her fist with a pair of chopsticks. He gently pushed her away. Tien and Piccolo tried a coordinated assault. Beerus shouted, just a ki, a burst of air from his lungs, and they were blown away like leaves in a hurricane. Gohan, the scholar warrior, powered up. He flew at the god. Beerus grabbed him by the hair and slammed him into the deck of the ship. It was effortless. It was absolute dominance. Whis continued to eat. He found a spoon and tried the pudding that had caused the war. It was sweet, creamy, with a hint of caramel. I can see why he was upset, Whis noted. This texture is divine. Vegeta was the last line of defense. He watched his friends fall. He watched his wife, Bulma, march up to the god of destruction and slap him across the face for ruining her party. Whis paused, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Oh dear. Beerus looked at Bulma. He looked at the woman who had dared to strike a deity. He slapped her back. Not with his full power, that would have atomized the solar system, but enough to knock her to the ground. That was the moment the prince broke. Vegeta didn't break in fear. He broke in rage. My Bulma! Vegeta screamed. The explosion of power was significant. For a brief moment, the Prince of Saiyans surpassed his limits. he surpassed Goku. He attacked Beerus with a fury that actually landed a hit. He punched the god. He blasted him. Whis watched with mild appreciation. Impressive, he thought. The power of emotion. Mortals are truly fascinating engines of energy. But it wasn't enough. It is never enough against the force of nature. Beerus swatted Vegeta aside. He floated up into the air, high above the ship. He created a sphere of energy. It was orange and purple, swirling with the power of erasure. It grew larger and larger, casting a terrifying shadow over the cruise ship, over the ocean, over the world. "I am bored," Beerus announced, his voice echoing from the sky. "There is no Super Saiyan God. There is only disappointment. I will destroy this earth, and then I will go back to sleep." The partygoers screamed. Vegeta lay on the deck, broken and defeated, tears of frustration in his eyes. Whis finished his pudding. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. He stood up, tapping his staff on the deck. He did not stop Beerus. It was not his place. If the destroyer chose to destroy, the angel simply watched. "It is a shame," Whis said to the trembling humans nearby. "The food here really is quite spectacular. I shall miss the sushi." The energy sphere descended. The heat began to boil the ocean. But then, a voice. "Lord Beerus, wait!" It came from the sky. It was breathless. It was desperate. Goku. He had returned. He stood on the deck of the ship, panting, looking up at the god. "Don't do it!" Goku yelled. I think I know how to find the Super Saiyan God. Give us a minute, please!" Beerus paused. The sphere of destruction hovered inches above the ship's mast. "You have 5 minutes," Beerus said. "Entertain me." Whis smiled. He floated up to hover beside Beerus. "Well, my lord," Whis said, "it seems the main course has finally arrived." The stage was set. The food had been tasted. The power had been tested. Now, the real lesson was about to begin. Not a lesson of destruction, but a lesson of transformation. Whis looked at Goku, then at the other Saiyans gathering on the deck. He saw the threads of destiny tightening. "Show us," Whis whispered into the wind. "Show us what mortals can do when they touch the realm of the gods." The ritual was not a spectacle of violence. It was a ceremony of spirit. Whis watched from the deck of the cruise ship, holding a fresh glass of iced tea, the condensation cool against his pale blue skin. He observed the circle of Saiyans. They stood hand in hand, a chain of warriors linked by blood and history. Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks, Goten, and the human girl, Videl, carrying the spark of the next generation within her. The sky above them changed. It did not darken with the storm clouds of Shenron. It cleared. The blue deepened into an indigo twilight, even though it was midday. A strange, ethereal wind began to blow, rippling the tablecloths and the surface of the pool. Then the light came. It was not the jagged, angry yellow of the Super Saiyan. It was a soft, flowing blue that transitioned into a fiery crimson red. It looked like liquid fire. It poured out of the Saiyans, pooling around Goku, lifting him gently into the air. Whis tilted his head, his eyes tracking the flow of energy. "Fascinating," he whispered. "It is not merely a multiplication of power. It is a fundamental shift in quality. They are converting mortal ki into divine ki." When the light faded, Goku descended. He looked different. He did not look like a monster or a titan. He looked younger. His hair was a vibrant magenta, settling softly around his face. His eyes were large, red, and calm. He looked leaner, stripped of the bulky muscle that usually defined Saiyan strength. He had become a Super Saiyan God. Beerus floated down to meet him. The destroyer looked pleased. "Finally," Beerus said, "someone who speaks my language." The battle that followed took place high above the earth, in the silent vacuum of the stratosphere. To the humans below, it was just distant flashes of light, like a meteor shower in the daytime. But Whis watched it all through his staff. He saw the collision of fists that sent ripples through the fabric of the universe. He saw the shock waves that threatened to crumble distant asteroids. With a subtle tap of his staff, Whis dampened the vibrations, protecting the earth below, like a parent shielding a sleeping child from a loud noise. He was the invisible wall that kept the china from breaking, while the bulls fought in the shop. He watched Goku struggle. The Saiyan was learning as he fought, adapting to a power he couldn't fully comprehend. He watched Goku absorb the God Ki, making it his own. He watched him push Beerus further than anyone had in millions of years. But a mortal, even a godlike one, has limits. Goku fell. His energy spent, he tumbled back toward the earth. Beerus caught him. The destroyer did not kill him. There was no malice left, only the satisfaction of a good workout. "I am sleepy," Beerus announced, feigning a yawn that was only half fake. "I have no energy left to destroy the earth. I think I will go home." It was a lie, of course. Beerus had plenty of energy left. But Whis knew the truth. The destroyer had grown fond of the monkeys. And perhaps, more importantly, he had grown fond of the pudding. "A wise decision, my lord," Whis said, floating up to join him. "It would be a shame to destroy a planet that produces such delightful ice cream." "Don't push it, Whis," Beerus grumbled. They tapped the staff. The column of light returned. They vanished from the blue sky of Earth, rocketing back into the depths of space, leaving the stunned Z-fighters and a relieved planet behind. The crisis was over. The silence returned. Back on the pyramid planet, the routine resumed. But the air had changed. The stagnation of eons was broken. Beerus went to sleep, but it was a light sleep. He woke up often, asking for snacks, asking about the Saiyan. Whis tended to the garden, pruning the glowing trees, but his mind was also on the earth. He kept his staff close. He watched the blue marble spinning in the dark. He saw Bulma, the brilliant, loud human woman. She was smart. She realized that the way to a deity's heart was through his stomach. She began to offer tribute, not gold, not worship, but strawberries, crab cakes, pizza. Whis visited Earth often during those months. He would arrive silently in the garden of Capsule Corp. Bulma would be waiting with a table spread with delicacies. "Oh my," Whis would say, tasting a slice of pepperoni pizza. The cheese stretched, hot and savory. The tomato sauce was acidic and sweet. The crust was crisp. "This pizza is a marvel of engineering. The structural integrity of the crust supporting the weight of the cheese, simply brilliant." It was during one of these visits that the second student appeared. Vegeta. The prince was waiting. He stood in the rain, his arms crossed, his face a mask of determination. He did not bow this time. He did not beg. "Take me with you," Vegeta said. Whis finished his slice of pizza, wiping his mouth delicately with a napkin. He looked at the prince. He saw the pride that had been shattered and glued back together. He saw the desperate need to catch up to Kakarot. "And why would I do that?" Whis asked lightly. "I am not a taxi service, nor am I a personal trainer. I am an angel." "I will give you the finest food on earth," Vegeta promised. "I will find you the best instant ramen." "Instant ramen?" Whis paused. The words sounded promising. "Is it better than pizza?" "It is different," Vegeta said. And so a bargain was struck. The price of godhood was a cup of noodles. This marked the beginning of the struggle. Not a struggle against a villain, but a struggle against the self. Vegeta traveled with Whis back to the destroyer's planet. The journey was long and the destination was harsh. The pyramid planet was not a resort. It was a place of heavy gravity and thick spiritual pressure. Vegeta expected battle. He expected to be beaten until he grew stronger, as was the Saiyan way. But Whis did not fight him. Whis gave him an apron. "First," Whis said, handing the prince a broom, "we must change the bed sheets of the Lord Beerus. Be very quiet. If you wake him, he will vaporize you." Vegeta stared at the broom. The prince of all Saiyans, reduced to a housekeeper. But he did it. He swept the floors. He wiped the dust from the oracle fish's bowl. He cut the grass of the massive garden. It was repetitive. It was mundane. It was infuriating. But Whis was watching. He was teaching the most important lesson first. Humility. You cannot fill a cup that is already full. Vegeta was full of ego, full of tension, full of noise. Whis needed to empty him before he could pour in the power of the gods. "You are too tight," Whis would say, watching Vegeta try to scrub a stain off the floor. "You are thinking about the scrub. Just scrub." Vegeta would growl, his ki flaring. "I am trying." "That is the problem," Whis would reply, floating away to check on a soufflé. "You are trying. Do not try. Be." Months later, Goku arrived. He had sensed the ki of Vegeta and Whis, and, feeling left out, had teleported across the universe to join the training. Now, Whis had 2 students. The dynamic changed. The silence of the planet was broken by their bickering, their competitions, their footsteps thundering as they ran laps around the base of the tree. Whis enjoyed it. He found their rivalry charming. It was like watching two puppies tumbling over each other. The training began in earnest. Whis dressed them in heavy suits, weighted gear that was not just heavy in mass, but heavy in spirit. It dragged on their souls. Movement became a chore. Even breathing was a workout. Run, run, Whis said, hovering above them as they jogged around the floating islands of the nebula. Lift your knees. Do not let the weight drag you down. Let it become part of you. They ran until their lungs burned. They ran until they collapsed. And then Whis would feed them. He would conjure a table in the middle of the void. He would serve steaming bowls of stew, rice, and vegetables. Eat, Whis instructed. Rest is as important as exertion. A warrior who cannot sleep is a warrior who will break. He watched them eat. Goku shoveled food into his mouth with joy. Vegeta ate with grim efficiency. Tell me, Vegeta, Whis said one evening, sipping his tea, why do you want to be strong? To beat Kakarot, Vegeta grunted. To never be second again. And you, Goku? I just want to see how strong I can get. Goku laughed, rice sticking to his cheek. There's always someone stronger, right? Whis smiled. Indeed. There is always a bigger fish, or in this case, a stronger cat. The physical training was brutal, but the mental training was the true struggle. Whis introduced them to the concept that would define their future. He stood in a clearing of purple grass. The two Saiyans stood opposite him, powered up, ready to attack. Come at me, Whis said. Together, they charged, a blur of orange and blue. They threw punches that could crack planets. They fired energy blasts that could light up a solar system. Whis did not attack. He simply existed. He stepped to the side. He leaned back. He spun on his heel. He wrote his signature on their GIs with a marker while dodging a kick. Goku and Vegeta stumbled, panting, hitting nothing but air. They were exhausted. Whis hadn't even spilled his tea. Do you know why you cannot hit me? Whis asked, his voice calm, echoing in the stillness. You're too fast, Goku wheezed. No, Whis shook his head. Speed has nothing to do with it. You are thinking. He tapped Goku on the forehead with his staff. You think, I will punch. The signal travels from your brain to your nerves to your fist. It takes time. Even a nanosecond is too long in a battle of gods. He turned to Vegeta. And you? You are always analyzing. What is he doing? What is the best strategy? You are calculating. Your mind is a noisy room. You must quiet the room. Whis closed his eyes. He stood on one leg. You must let your body think for itself. Every part of you must be independent. The hand knows how to block. The foot knows how to step. Sever the mind from the movement. Let your body act on instinct. Ultra instinct. It was a concept so foreign to them, so contrary to everything they had ever learned about martial arts, that they couldn't grasp it. They struggled. They failed. They overthought the process of not thinking. Vegeta would freeze up, trying to force his mind to go blank, which only made it louder. Goku would relax too much and leave himself open to attack. Clumsy, Whis would chide gently, but promising. He watched them struggle with the patience of a mountain, watching the seasons change. He knew this was not a lesson learned in a day or a year. It was the work of a lifetime. During the nights, when the Saiyans slept the deep, dead sleep of the exhausted, Whis would sit by the oracle fish. "They are progressing," Whis whispered to the fish. "The prince is rigid, like iron. He needs heat to mold. The other one is fluid, like water. He needs a vessel to give him shape." "Will they become rivals for Beerus?" the fish asked, bubbling in its bowl. "Perhaps," Whis said. "Or perhaps they will become something else entirely, something new." The atmosphere of the universe began to shift again. The peace was thinning. Whis could feel it through the orb. Far away, in the dark corners of the galaxy, a ship was moving. Sorbet, the remnants of the Freezer force, was gathering. They were heading to Earth. They were seeking the Dragon Balls. We saw the wish being made. He saw the pieces of the tyrant being gathered. He saw the resurrection tank. Freezer was returning. "Oh my," Whis noted, watching the image of the patchwork tyrant floating in the healing fluid. "It seems the past refuses to stay buried." He didn't tell his students yet. They weren't ready. They were still struggling to lift the heavy suits. They were still struggling to sense the God Ki without leaking it. One day, Whis took them to a special place, a pocket dimension inside his staff. It was a white void, similar to the hyperbolic time chamber, but filled with the density of divine energy. "Inside here," Whis explained, "time does not move, and the pressure is immense. If you cannot control your ki, you will be crushed." He sent them in. He watched them from the outside. He saw them floating in the white nothingness. He saw them stop fighting each other and start synchronizing. They touched hands. They realized that to survive the pressure, they had to stop letting their energy explode outward. They had to keep it inside. They had to simmer, not boil. Whis watched the aura around them change. The erratic yellow flame of the Super Saiyan vanished. In its place, a blue light began to flicker. It was calm. It was deep. It was the color of a tranquil ocean. "Super Saiyan Blue," Whis mused, naming the form before they did. A Super Saiyan with the power of a Super Saiyan God. A bit of a mouthful, isn't it? He let them stay in the void. He let them struggle against the crushing weight. He knew that diamonds are only formed under pressure. This was the struggle. The long, quiet days of breaking down the mortal shell to reveal the divine core. It was not glorious. There were no crowds cheering. There was only the sound of breathing, the sting of sweat, and the gentle correcting tap of the angel's staff. "Again," Whis would say, "again, again," until the movement became fluid, until the thought vanished, until the warriors began to move like the wind. Whis stood on the balcony of the castle, looking out at the nebula. He held a cup of tea. He felt a sense of satisfaction. The garden was growing. The weeds were being pruned. The saplings were becoming oaks. "Lord Beerus," Whis called out softly, "you might want to wake up soon. The pizza delivery is running late, and I believe the universe is about to get very loud again." The struggle was nearing its end. The test was approaching. The Golden Emperor was polishing his scales, and the Blue Saiyans were learning to breathe. Whis took a sip of tea. It was perfect. The struggle of the training was over. The lesson of the empty mind had been taught, though not yet fully learned. Now came the test. We stood in the garden of the destroyer's planet. The air was still. The nebula above churned in slow violet spirals. He held his staff, peering into the black orb that served as his window to the cosmos. He saw the ship. It was not the sleek, white disk of the Cold Era. It was a jagged, utilitarian vessel, pieced together by the remnants of a shattered empire. Sorbet's ship. It was descending through the blue atmosphere of Earth. Whis watched with the detached curiosity of a biologist observing a petri dish. He saw the hatch open. He saw the soldiers pour out like ants. And he saw him, Frieza. The tyrant had returned, but he was different. The cybernetic scars were gone, healed by the advanced technology of the regeneration tank. He stood in his first form, small and sleek, radiating a cold, malicious intent. But underneath that familiar shell, Whis could sense a new density, a power that had been forged not by birthright but by effort. 4 months, Whis murmured, recalling the tyrant's boast. He actually trained. How novel. Beside him, Lord Beerus was napping in a hammock strung between 2 glowing trees. The god of destruction snored, a bubble expanding and contracting from his nose. "Lord Beerus," Whis said softly, "the alarm is ringing." Beerus swatted at a fly in his sleep. 5 more minutes. Whis tapped the staff against the ground. A gentle chime rang out, vibrating through the garden. "It seems your rivals are in a spot of trouble, and Bulma has a strawberry sundae waiting." One eye popped open. The yellow slit focused on Whis. "Sundae?" "With extra whipped cream. Assuming, of course, the planet survives the next hour." The journey to Earth was faster this time. They did not take the leisurely 35-minute scenic route. Whis wrapped them in the warp bubble, and they pierced the fabric of space. Inside the bubble, Whis observed the battlefield. He saw the Z fighters, Gohan, Piccolo, the others, struggling against the swarm of Frieza's soldiers. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the arrival of his students. Goku and Vegeta arrived instantly, using instant transmission. They stepped onto the battlefield, not with the frantic energy of the past, but with a new, grounded confidence. They wore the symbol of Whis on their chests, a small, swirled signature that marked them not as masters, but as students of the divine. "Look at them," Whis noted, pointing to the image in the orb as they traveled. "They are standing still. They are not leaking ki. The training in the void has paid off." Beerus grunted. "They better win. I'm hungry." They broke through the atmosphere of Earth just as the true battle began. The sky of Earth was usually a cheerful blue, but today it was choked with the dust of combat. Whis and Beerus hovered high above the clouds, unseen, watching the drama unfold below. Frieza was transforming. Whis had seen many transformations in his eons of existence. He had seen caterpillars become butterflies. He had seen stars collapse into black holes. He had seen the Saiyans turn gold. But this was garish. A blinding light erupted from the tyrant. It was a desperate, screaming light. And when it faded, Frieza stood revealed in gold. He shimmered from head to toe, a metallic statue brought to life. "Golden Frieza," the tyrant announced, his voice dripping with pride. Whis tilted his head. "A bit monochromatic for my taste and, oh dear." "What?" Beerus asked, peeling a banana he had produced from nowhere. "He rushed it," Whis observed. "He unlocked the form, but he did not master it. He is burning fuel, like a rocket with a leak. He is making the same mistake the Saiyans used to make." The fight began. It was a clash of philosophies as much as a clash of fists. Frieza fought with fury. He fought with the pent-up humiliation of his time in hell. He threw beams of energy that tore up the ocean. He punched with the weight of a collapsing star. Against him, Goku fought with the lesson of the angel. Goku transformed. It was not the explosive, earth-shaking scream of the past. It was a subtle shift, a quiet exhale. The yellow aura did not appear. Instead, a blue mist wrapped around him, gentle and flowing like water. His hair lifted, turning the color of a cyan sky. Super Saiyan Blue. Whis watched the collision, gold against blue, rage against calm. Frieza was stronger initially. His raw power output was higher. He battered Goku, knocking him through mountains, pummeling him into the dirt. He laughed, thinking he had won. But Whis saw the invisible hourglass draining above Frieza's head. "He's losing," Whis said simply. "He's winning," Beerus argued, watching Goku get kicked into a cliff. "He's winning the sprint," Whis corrected. "But this is a marathon, and Frieza has forgotten to breathe." Minutes passed. The gold began to tarnish. Frieza's breath came in ragged gasps. His punches lost their snap. The power slipped through his fingers like water. Goku stood up. He wasn't panting. He wasn't desperate. He looked at Frieza with disappointment. "You're done," Goku said. Then Vegeta stepped in. Whis watched with a particular sense of pride as the prince took the field. Vegeta did not offer mercy. He did not offer a fair fight. He offered a correction. Vegeta transformed into blue. He beat Frieza without hesitation. He vented the trauma of his childhood, the destruction of his father, the enslavement of his race. He knocked the tyrant out of his golden form, leaving him kneeling in the dirt, white and fragile once more. It was a perfect victory. Or it should have been. But mortals are flawed. Goku suffers from overconfidence, Vegeta suffers from overthinking, and Frieza suffers from spite. We saw the energy gathering in Frieza's hand before anyone else did. He saw the madness in the tyrant's eyes. "I do not lose," Frieza whispered. Frieza slammed his hand into the earth. It was not an attack on Vegeta. It was an attack on the foundation. He poured his remaining energy into the planet's core. Whis sighed. Here we go. The sound was not an explosion. It was a crack, a sickening structural failure of the planetary crust. The ground beneath Vegeta's feet dissolved into magma. The ocean boiled instantly. The sky collapsed. Earth exploded. It happened in seconds. One moment, there was a blue marble teeming with life, with strawberry sundaes and pizza and martial arts. The next, there was only expanding dust and the cold silence of the void. Whis and Beerus floated in their bubble, unharmed beside them, floating in a smaller shield Whis had created at the last second, were the survivors, Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, and the others. They stared at the debris field. They stared at the place where their families had been, where Vegeta had been. He did it! Goku stammered, his eyes wide with horror. He destroyed the earth. Beerus looked at the dust. And my Sunday, the destroyer added, though his voice lacked its usual bite. That lizard actually did it. Silence reigned. A heavy, suffocating silence. This was the climax, the ultimate failure. The students had become strong enough to win, but not wise enough to finish the job. Whis looked at Goku. He saw the grief. He saw the regret. It is a shame, Whis said, his voice cutting through the despair. You had him beaten, but you hesitated. You let your guard down. And Vegeta, he took too long to deliver the final blow. He overthought the victory. Goku clenched his fists. Damn it! Whis tapped his staff against the invisible floor of his bubble. The sound was sharp, like a bell ringing in a quiet room. However, Whis said, looking at the floating dust, it is not necessarily the end. Goku looked up. What? I can rewind time, Whis stated calmly. But only by 3 minutes, and I can only do it once in a while. It disrupts the temporal flow, and it is rather draining. He looked at Goku with intense seriousness. The playful angel was gone. The teacher remained. If I do this, Goku, you cannot hesitate. You must act the moment we return. Do you understand? Goku nodded, his face hardening into the mask of a warrior. I understand. Very well. Whis raised his staff. He tapped the bottom against the void. Tap, tap. The universe shuddered. It was not a physical sensation of wind or speed. It was a sensation of undoing. Imagine a spilled cup of tea. The dark liquid spreads across the table, dripping onto the floor, staining the wood. Now, imagine the liquid retreating. The drips rise from the floor. The stain vanishes. The tea flows back into the cup. The cup rights itself. That is the temporal do-over. Whis watched the debris field of Earth condense. The dust pulled back together. The magma cooled and retreated into the crust. The ocean refilled the basins. The clouds reformed in the blue sky. The stars spun backward. The light of the explosion was sucked back into the planet. Reality reassembled itself like a puzzle being solved in reverse. They were back. The air was hot. The smell of ozone and sulfur returned. Frieza was on his knees, his hand raised, screaming his defiance. "I am the Emperor!" Frieza shouted, preparing to slam his hand down. "Now, Goku!" Whis shouted. It was rare for Whis to raise his voice. It was a command that brooked no delay. Goku did not hesitate. He did not transform. He did not speechify. He moved with the instinct Whis had tried so hard to teach him. He burst into Super Saiyan Blue. He fired a Kamehameha. The blue beam screamed across the short distance. It was a lance of pure energy. Vegeta, who was standing over Frieza, startled. "Kakarot? What are you?" The beam passed inches from Vegeta's face. It hit Frieza. There was no monologue. There was no final bargaining. The energy engulfed the tyrant. It vaporized the hand that was about to destroy the world. It vaporized the body that had survived the vacuum of space. "Go back to hell," Goku said. Frieza vanished. The energy dissipated. The scorch mark on the ground was smoking. Silence returned to the battlefield. But this time the earth was still there. The ocean was still waving. The sky was still blue. Vegeta turned to Goku furious. "You idiot! I had him. Why did you steal my kill?" Goku dropped out of his transformation, panting. He looked at Vegeta. He looked at the ground that was solid beneath his feet. He smiled, a look of profound relief. "Trust me, Vegeta," Goku said. "You don't want to know." Whis floated down, landing softly on a rock. He tapped his staff. "You saved the Earth, Goku, but barely." Beerus landed next to him. "That was too close. Where is my Sunday?" Bulma ran out from behind the rocks. She looked at the crater. She looked at Goku and Vegeta arguing. She looked at Whis. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now," Whis said. Later, as they ate the strawberry sundaes on the deck of the cruise ship, a feast that tasted all the sweeter for having been almost lost, Whis reflected on the event. Frieza was gone, sent back to his cocoon in hell. The Earth was safe, but the lesson was only half learned. Goku had acted, but he had needed a do-over. Vegeta had won, but his arrogance had almost cost him everything. They were still flawed, they were still unfinished. "They are a handful, aren't they?" Bulma asked, handing Whis a napkin. "Indeed," Whis replied, wiping a smudge of cream from his lip. "But they are improving, slowly." He looked up at the sky. He felt the ripples of the time manipulation fading. But he also felt something else. The use of such power does not go unnoticed. The multiverse is a large place, and Universe 7 is not the only garden. Across the void, in Universe 6, another angel was watching. Vados. And another destroyer, Champa. And beyond them, a timeline was fracturing. A boy with a sword and lavender hair was running through a ruined city, chased by a shadow that wore Goku's face. The climax of Frieza's return was over, but the true complexity of the multiverse was just beginning to unfurl. Whis finished his sundae. He stood up. "Come along, Lord Beerus," Whis said. "We should return home. I have a feeling we will be having visitors soon. And we really must work on your table manners before the Omni King gets involved." The bubble formed again. They rose into the stars, leaving the blue marble behind. Whis closed his eyes, returning to his meditation, returning to the stillness. The storm had passed. The water was calm, but the tide was rising. The tea was steeping. The nebula outside the castle windows was turning a slow, deep violet, churning in a silence so profound it felt like a heavy blanket. Whis sat at a small, round table on the balcony. The steam from his porcelain cup rose in a perfectly straight line, undisturbed by the wind, disappearing into the twilight. Across from him, Lord Beerus was asleep in a floating chair. A half-eaten pizza crust rested on his chest, rising and falling with his breath. The chaos of Earth, the return of Frieza, the reversing of time, the screaming beams of blue energy, it all felt like a distant dream here in the sanctuary of the gods. Time on this planet was viscous. It absorbed urgency. It smoothed out the jagged edges of memory until everything became a peaceful, flowing river. But Whis knew, as he sipped his Earl Grey, that the universe had changed irrevocably. The seal had been broken. The mortals had tasted the divine. He looked into the black orb of his staff, which leaned against the stone railing. Through the swirling mist of the oracle, he saw his students. Goku was on Earth, driving a tractor through a field of wheat, though his mind was clearly in the clouds, shadow-boxing an invisible enemy. Vegeta was in the gravity room at Capsule Corp, training with a ferocity that suggested he was trying to punch a hole through the fabric of reality itself. They were no longer just mortals. They had touched the realm of the gods. They had wrapped themselves in the blue Kai. And Whis knew a fundamental truth of the cosmos. Once you taste the sky, you can never be content with the ground again. This is the legacy of the angel, to plant seeds that will eventually outgrow the garden. The years that followed were a tapestry of escalating stakes, woven with threads of both wonder and tragedy. Whis watched as the boundaries of the known universe expanded, revealing that their existence was but one of 12 bubbles floating in a vast, indifferent sea. He saw the arrival of Champa, the destroyer of Universe 6, a mirror image of Beerus, though slightly rounder and louder, and with him came Vados, Whis' own sister, an angel of cool precision and teasing wit. They brought with them the concept of a multiverse, of mirrored worlds and divergent destinies. Then came the dark time, a timeline fractured. A boy with lavender hair returned from a broken future, smelling of ash, rain, and ancient sorrow. Trunks. He brought news of a god who had fallen. Zamasu. Whis viewed this tragedy with a rare, deep solemnity. To an angel, a fallen god is the ultimate failure. It is a gardener who looks at the weeds and decides to poison the entire soil. It is a betrayal of the balance. Whis watched his students travel to that ruined future, a world of grey clouds and green skies. He saw them struggle against the twisted immortality of Zamasu. He saw the fusion of the blue warriors, Vegeta, burning bright and brief against the darkness, a candle flickering in a sim hurricane. And he saw the end. He saw the king of all, Zeno, raise a small childlike hand. He saw the white light of erasure. He saw a universe simply cease to be. A pity, Whis whispered to the nebula, closing his eyes for a long moment. Balance is delicate. Tilt too far toward order, and you get tyranny. Tilt too far toward chaos, and you get destruction. He tapped his staff against the stone floor. Tap. It was a sound of mourning for a timeline that no longer existed. He helped create a new path for the survivors, a small mercy in a cold cosmos. Angels are neutral, yes, but neutrality does not mean indifference. It simply means they must watch the tragedy without intervening in the script. Then came the ultimate test. The tournament of power. Imagine a void, a place of infinite nothingness. No stars to guide you, no time to measure the passing moments, just a spinning top of a stage, suspended in the dark, surrounded by the silent spectators of the divine hierarchy. 80 warriors, 8 universes, 1 survivor. We stood in the spectator stands next to a nervous Beerus. He watched his team. Goku, Vegeta, the resurrected Frieza, Android 17, Gohan. He saw the desperation of survival. He watched as universes blinked out of existence one by one, the lights fading like fireflies at dawn. The angels of the erased universes stood alone, their staffs quiet, their charges gone. It was a somber procession of loss. But amidst the dread, Whis saw the bloom. He watched Goku. The Saiyan was battered. He was exhausted. He was pushed into the gravity well of his own spirit bomb, falling into the event horizon of his own limits. The pressure was absolute. And then, silence. A pillar of heat erupted. It was not the angry gold of the past. It was not the calm blue of the recent years. It was silver. Goku stepped out of the light. His eyes were silver. His hair was black, but rimmed with a celestial white glow. He moved without thinking. He attacked without anger. Beerus stood up in the stands, his claws gripping the railing. Whis, is that? Yes, my lord, Whis said, a genuine proud smile spreading across his face. He has finally done it. Ultra instinct. It was the lesson of the broom. It was the lesson of the leaky kimono. It was the lesson of the empty mind, fully realized in a mortal shell. Whis watched Goku fight Jiren. It was not a brawl, it was a dance. Goku flowed around attacks like water flowing around a stone in a river. He struck with the inevitability of a thunderstorm. For the first time in eons, Whis felt a surge of something that might have been pride. He was the gardener, and this was his prize rose, blooming in the middle of a battlefield at the end of time. He has mastered the movement, Whis noted softly. Though the toll on a mortal body is severe. It is like running lightning through a copper wire. He saw the white-hot heat overtake Goku. He saw the form break. He saw the final, desperate alliance of Goku and Frieza, dragging the mighty Jiren into the void. Universe 7 survived. Balance was restored, but the ceiling had been shattered. Goku had shown that a mortal could stand in the realm of the angels. The story could have ended there, but the universe is vast, and history is a wheel that keeps turning. Not long after the tournament, another ripple appeared, a legendary signal from the frozen wasteland of Earth. Broly. Whis was there when the lost Saiyan arrived. He remembered the reports of the infant sent to the harsh world of Vampa, the child exiled for his power. He stood on the Arctic ice of Earth, wrapped in his heavy coat, watching the tragedy unfold. He saw the father, Paragus, consumed by a lifetime of revenge. He saw the son, Broly, wearing the green fur of his lost friend, consumed by a power he didn't understand. He watched Broly tear through the ice, a force of nature that shattered the glaciers. He watched Goku and Vegeta fail to stop him individually. The raw power of the exile was too great. And then there was a moment that defines the nature of Whis perfectly. Goku and Vegeta fled to perform the fusion dance. Broly, in a blind golden rage, turned his eyes toward the only other power source nearby, Whis. The legendary Super Saiyan charged the angel. Broly punched with enough force to shatter a dimension, his eyes blank with fury. Whis did not attack. He did not power up. He simply stepped back. He drifted. He bobbed. He weaved. Broly roared, swinging wildly, tears streaming down his face, driven by the pain of his father's death. Whis danced around him, his staff tapping lightly against Broly's fists, redirecting the massive energy into the sky. My, Whis chuckled, dodging a blast that vaporized a mountain. You are quite vigorous, aren't you? He wasn't fighting. He was playing. He was treating the berserker like a misbehaving puppy, guiding him without hurting him, waiting for the timeline to correct itself. It was the ultimate demonstration of the peace that lies at the center of power. Then Gogeta arrived. The fusion. The culmination of Goku and Vegeta's rivalry. Whis watched the finale from a safe distance, eating a snack. He saw the blue beam rise. He saw the dragon summoned. He saw Broly saved, sent back to Vampa, back to the home he knew. A happy ending, Whis noted, finishing his treat. How wonderful! Now the timeline settles. We return to the pyramid planet. The nebula is still turning, casting long shadows across the stone floor. The tree is still growing, its roots drinking from the deep waters of the planet. Goku and Vegeta are still there. They are running laps around the base of the tree, their breath visible in the thin air. They are chasing the horizon of their own potential. But they are different now. They have diverged. Goku, clad in his orange gi, closes his eyes as he moves. He is seeking the silver light again. He is chasing the calm. He is trying to become like the wind, soft, shapeless, and omnipresent. He seeks the path of the angel. Vegeta, clad in his armor, burns with a dark violet flame. He is not seeking calm. He is seeking the power of destruction. He is learning to harness the energy of the destroyer. He seeks the path of the god. Whis stands on the balcony, watching them. The era of chaos has calmed for a moment. He thinks about the future. He knows that nothing lasts forever. Even gods of destruction eventually fade. Even stars burn out. But the lesson remains. The lesson that strength is not about how loud you can scream or how hard you can punch. Strength is about control. It is about the ability to stand in the fire and not be burned. It is about the ability to hold a teacup in the middle of a hurricane and not spill a drop. Whis looks at Beerus, who is awake now, watching the Saiyans train with a grumpy sort of affection. They are getting noisy again. Beerus complains, his ear twitching. They are living, my lord, Whis says. Life is noise. Only death is silent. Make me some ramen and put an egg in it this time. As you wish. Whis turns back to the interior of the castle. He walks through the halls of ancient stone. His footsteps are silent. Tap, tap, tap. He is the constant. He is the observer. He is the silver line that connects the past to the future. He is the calm center of the spinning wheel. And now he turns to you. You have walked the path of the gods tonight. You have seen the creation and the destruction. You have seen the gold and the blue and the silver. You have traveled from the red dust of planet Vegeta to the white void of the tournament of power and back to the quiet garden of the destroyer. But now the training is over. The heavy suits can be taken off. The weights can be dropped. Imagine yourself standing in Whis' garden. The air is sweet and thin, filling your lungs with clarity. The gravity is heavy, pulling you down, grounding you into the soft purple grass. You can feel the vibration of the great tree in the ground beneath you. It is a hum of deep ancient peace, a frequency of rest. Whis stands before you. He is not holding his staff. He is holding a lantern. The light is soft and warm, flickering gently. You have done well, he says. His voice is a melody, soft and reassuring. You have observed. You have learned, but now the lesson is rest. He lifts the lantern. The light spreads, covering the world in a gentle twilight haze. The violet sky deepens into a comforting black. To master the body, you must let it sleep, he whispers. To master the mind, you must let it drift. Release your thoughts. Let them float away like the bubbles in the oracle fish's bowl. They are not important now. Release your tension. Let it drain out of you, flowing into the ground, absorbed by the roots of the tree. You are safe here, in the sanctuary of the angel. Nothing can harm you, no noise can reach you. The hourglass has stopped. There is only the stillness. The nebula turns. Above you, a slow, hypnotic spiral of violet and blue. The stars are blinking slowly. like heavy eyelids closing for the night. You are floating. You are weightless. You are entering your own ultra instinct, a state where you do not need to try to sleep. You simply are. The staff taps one last time. A final gentle note that rings in the center of your chest, loosening the last knot of worry. Tap. The world fades. The story ends. The silence begins. Sleep, student of the cosmos. The universe will be here when you wake. Good night.